Hey everybody. Um, it's hard to believe that we're almost 3 weeks done with this semester. 20% of the semester. It feels like we've just barely gotten started. We're just barely getting to know each other and kind of understanding what the purpose of the class is. So as you continue on in terms of assignments and the things that I'm giving you and readings and stuff like that, continue to send me emails if you have questions about stuff. I'm happy to answer some questions. And I just wanted to do a little bit of a review here. Sorry this is a little bit later in the week than I had planned. Had some technical difficulties, and then my wife ended up with some issues with her back, and so I had to help her out yesterday for a significant part of the day because she was on muscle relaxers. So some unpredictable things. So that's why I'm getting this message to you on Friday. First, I wanted to make a couple quick comments about the week one discussion. I think it's really important to notice that the idea of racism came up a lot in those discussions. And it can be used as a model for a lot of other types of oppressions that we were going to be talking about. But it's one of the ones that's kind of the most visible, especially lately. There have been a lot of things going on in the country, in particular related to racism. And I think it's really important to distinguish between instances of racism and systemic racism. Systemic racism are policies and structures and things that deny people of color certain privileges and advantages that white people have traditionally had. And that's kind of the sum total of it at the very, very basic level. So you can't really deny that people of color in the United States have been denied some rights as compared to white people. Now, that doesn't mean that white people haven't had a lot of issues where maybe they have been discriminated against, or there's been bigotry focused toward them in individual instances. And so I think it's really important to look at that there are individual experiences that a lot of people have had that may suggest that, like, hey, this idea of oppression might be false. I'm a white man and I'm not allowed to apply for these particular scholarships. Or I'm a white woman and I don't get paid as much as another man. The interesting thing about it is that some of those things might be due to class or gender or things other than race. And so keep that in mind. I think it's really important to look at that and to continue to question the idea of systemic racism, systemic ableism, systemic heterosexism, these things that by policies are supported. Marriage rights in terms of heterosexism. There's a lot of different policies that have come to light over the years that suggest that people in the disadvantaged classes have rights taken away from them, or just don't have as many rights. So keep that in mind. As for the week two discussion, there were a few people that didn't do the format correctly. However, provided some interesting information. Make sure you look back at that. If you can still submit stuff for partial credit if it's late, if you didn't do it right the first time in terms of the formatting. Also, something to take a look at is that we've created a huge database now in that discussion board, right? There's a whole bunch of summaries of situations that are going on around the world that are important to look at, particularly in terms of how the United States relates to these in terms of foreign policy. First of all, I want to make a clarification. A lot of people confuse the idea of refugees and immigrants, or refugees and illegal immigrants in particular. And I want to point out that by definition, right, if you look up the UN definition of refugees and how they have come to the United States and been invited by the United States and have started on a path to citizenship, they are by definition not illegal. Okay. Now this might be a little bit different situation in Europe where people can cross land borders a little bit more easily. But here in the United States, if somebody has been given asylum and given refugee status, they are legal and they are on a path to citizenship. So that's really important to remember. And they typically are people who have been heavily vetted and chosen because they have the most likelihood of having success in the United States. Typically have ideas and beliefs that are compatible with ideas and beliefs in the United States. Something else to keep in mind is that there's a huge, as you noticed, range of difficult situations around the world. And it's really easy to become overwhelmed or devastated by some of these. And so for a lot of us in the United States, although we may face our own issues, we do have the privilege of living in the United States, which by and large is a fairly peaceful country within, and we're fairly protected, right? There are dangers, of course, and there's things that we need to look at, but we don't have a civil war that has forced 4.5 million people to flee. So keep that privilege in mind, that it's important to kind of escape sometimes from this bombardment of information. You have to curate yourself and stay healthy while you're continuing to study these difficult things and maybe even performing some sort of activism according to them. I also want to talk a little bit about the cycle of socialization and the purpose of it in relationship to the code of ethics that you're going to be doing, right? Your code of ethics is a list of the key beliefs of your lifetime, essentially, the things that guide your moral decisions. And don't forget that your socialization has had a huge impact on how you came up with this code. So when you're embarking on the journey toward writing this longer essay, the Code of Ethics analysis essay, you want to make sure that you're thinking about how did my first socialization and my cultural and institutional socializations and all these enforcements, how did they change the way I believe and affect the things on my code of ethics, okay? And a lot of people on that particular discussion board also talked a lot about religion. So it seems like this particular group of people in this class have important aspects of their code of ethics attached and their socialization attached to a religion. So we'll be looking at that a little bit, because religion is going to contribute to what you believe and why you believe it. And also, just a real quick nuts and bolts thing, for late assignments, feel free to continue to turn things in for partial credit. I think it's better late than never, so I do offer you at least a little bit of a carrot to try to finish some things up as we progress through the semester, because I think I try to build things, I try to make things necessary so that if you miss an assignment, it's worthwhile to go back, because it'll come into play on a later assignment. So let me know if you have any questions about anything. I'd be happy to answer them, and I hope that everybody's having a good day. This is one of my longer videos because I ended up with a little more time in between videos than the last one. I like to try to keep them to 5 minutes, so hopefully you've made it to the very end of this, and I hope you have a great weekend. I'll talk to you later. Bye.